Welcome to Do You Ever Wonder with your host, Mike Haltman. It's the podcast that will answer your questions about many of the things in life we've always wanted to know more about. Our guests, experts in their chosen field, will enlighten us about subjects ranging from real estate, business, career, science, philanthropy, and much more. Proudly presented by Hallmark Abstract Service, it is once again time to sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride on our information superhighway. And now, here's Mike Haltman.
Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Do You Ever Wonder? My name is indeed Mike Haltman, and I am the CEO of Hallmark Abstract Service. I am the host of this podcast, and in addition, I am the board chair of the Combat Veterans 501c3 Heroes to Heroes Foundation. That last part I usually don't bring up, but I think today we're going to be talking about some veterans issues with our guest, so I thought I'd throw it in there. So today's guest is an entrepreneur. He is a philanthropist. He does public speaking. He's an author, and he was born in Queens and started his career in New York City with a very interesting story. I mean, he's obviously quite a focused and driven man. And I'd like to welcome the 1-800-Flowers founder and CEO, Jim McCann. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you, Michael. One quick correction.
Yes.
I'm no longer the CEO. My younger brother, Chris, 10 years my junior, followed me in that role coming up on 6 years ago. So I'm still the chair and I still work full time, but that one point of difference.
Okay, well, you know what? I studied your biography and I
Got it.
well taken. So one quick fun fact, I still have a dentist in the bottom of a building, and I used to drive to that building, and the building was the 1-800-Flowers building. And I was always thinking, to meet Jim McCann would be an unbelievable thing. And here I am.
You have to have higher goals in life than that.
You know what? Sadly, I don't.
That would be Dr. Jerry Grossman.
Yes, you know him.
He's my dentist to this day.
Is he really?
Yep.
You know what? He's a great guy. He was actually, so I did the Long Island Fight for Charity, and Jerry was my ring photographer.
Oh, he's a great photographer. His office is filled with his photography from over the years. It's really a passion, and he's quite good.
He's phenomenal. I actually have a picture from Shinnecock hanging in my office. That he took. It's what he has a great feel for shadows and black and white, and he's great. He also a perfectionist with the teeth.
Yeah.
He does good work. So I'd like to touch a little bit about you're an entrepreneur. I mean, obviously you've created an empire, and it started almost by chance. Can you just talk a little bit about how you got into the flower business?
It was by chance, Michael. When you say an entrepreneur, I think I've become an entrepreneur, but I didn't start out as an entrepreneur, because right now, in the course of my lifetime, the term entrepreneur has become something very positive. The idea that I would be in small business or in business for myself before I considered myself an entrepreneur was pretty much an accident. What I mean by that is, growing up where I did, and you and I have chatted about where we each grew up, it was not far away in mileage, but it was a long way away in reality. I grew up in South Queens. South Ozone Park was a neighborhood, Richmond Hill, South Ozone Park. I thought it was a wonderful place to grow up, and indeed for me it was, but it wasn't the best of circumstances either. And if you looked around the neighborhood I grew up in, we had different kinds of role models. We had shopkeepers. We had a lot of civil servants, cops, firemen, sanitation. We had a lot of people who were in the trades. My father was a painting contractor. We had plumbers and carpenters. So lots of good tradesmen. Then you had a few people who put a suit on and go to the city, which was for us Manhattan. And couldn't quite imagine what they do in a suit in an office all day. So I didn't do particularly well in school, and so therefore it narrowed my options in terms of what I do for a career. I thought from a young age that I would wind up as a policeman. In fact, I wound up going to John Jay College of Criminal Justice to pursue that. But along the way, an accident, I wound up getting a job through a good friend of mine who worked in a home for teenage boys in Queens, and he ran one of their group homes, which was a 2-story, 2.5, 3-story brick home in a kind of tough neighborhood in Queens. And he had 10 teenage boys there in his care. And he asked me, I'd ask him about that work all the time. And finally, he challenged me to come have dinner with him one night with the guys, which I did. And after dinner, he said, come on downstairs to the basement to his office and let's chat. And he said, do you think you'd ever like to give this work a try? And I said, I think I would. So he flipped me the keys and said, well, I'm in a pickle because I got no one to work tonight. And someone's got to work, sleep over, get the kids up to school in the morning. Would you do it? I said, sure, I'll give it a try. So accidents, that was my first
training
career.
program.
Yeah, there was no training program. And so that was a wonderful beginning of my first career kind of work. And I did that for 14 years. And I loved it. And I learned so much about it. I wasn't particularly good at it to begin with, but I learned how to be better. But I was working in the not-for-profit social work world where you don't make any money. And again, decisions that you make, changing the number of options you have or don't have. Mary Lou and I, my wife and I, married very young. We started a family very young. And so working as a not-for-profit social worker, even though I'm now the administrator of the home, you don't make very much money. So I was always doing things on the side to supplement my income. I mentioned my dad was a painting contractor. I worked for him from the time I was old enough to walk on and off. And so I learned how to do a lot of those things. And what I would do is I'd buy a building in a rundown neighborhood, fix it up, either sell it or rent it out. And in addition, being an Irish Catholic kid from South Queens, I had a genetic requirement to be a bartender. So I was working at a place on the Upper East Side of Manhattan Friday and Saturday nights to raise some extra money. And one of my customers, when I was working in that joint, would stay late on a Saturday night and we'd talk. And he owned a flower shop across the street. And he tells me, I have a new business idea, so I'm going to sell the flower shop. So I said, Nick, how much you asking for that flower shop? He said, $10,000. So this is 1976. And I had just sold a building in Brooklyn that had a $10,000 profit in it. So I thought this is serendipity. Right. And I wound up buying that flower shop from him with the intent of building a flower business, Michael, not just to be a florist, which of course I became, but to build a business. Now, so I kept my full-time job.
What did you know about flowers at the time?
I didn't know anything about flowers, but I worked there a few Saturdays in the afternoon before I went to the bar to see what it was like. It's a small flower shop, 800 square feet. And it seemed like they were involved in people's lives at a very nice time in their lives, celebratory events. People were in good moods. It seemed like nice. I could figure this out. So I hired a friend to run that shop who knew quite a bit about plants and was a good guy. And I figured we'll figure it out. So I kept my full-time job for another 8 years because I wanted to commit to, I could pay the mortgage and put some groceries on the table and take anything I did in the flower business and roll it back into expanding. So 6 months after the first store, I opened the second store, and every 6 months, then every 4 months. And then at the end of 10 years, I had a lot of flower shops and realized there's not really any great economy of scale here in having a big number of these.
So that's when did you buy the company with the 1-800-Flowers phone number?
So I started my first shop April 1st, 1976. And in 1986, we bought the company that was kaput, but had the telephone number in it, 800 Flowers, in 1986. Then began to change the name of our shops to 1-800-Flowers, which everyone thought was pretty crazy. At first, we did 800 Flowers, and nobody could figure out that it was a telephone number, so we added the 1. And so it changed how we went to market because we had to make a success out of this new way of marketing back in 1986, back in the dark ages. And but it changed the way we thought about business completely. In fact, I had to start selling off those stores because we needed capital to try and make this idea go. So that's when we became franchisors. So I sold those shops off to franchisees to raise capital to try and get this 800 number idea to take off.
So you weren't an entrepreneur at the beginning, and you didn't do well in school, and yet you had a drive and a business acumen to recognize the value of the phone number and to also have a feel for how you should proceed to the next level. So
yeah, I didn't apply myself well enough in school. But the one thing I would agree with, yeah, I had drive. I was willing to work harder than anybody else. So I didn't have days off. And that was tough, having, 3 young kids, but having a very supportive wife was pretty critically important. And, so curious, driven, yes. Willing to work really hard, yes. So we could make mistakes and keep going, and we made a lot. So no, not an entrepreneur to begin with. That implies some other characteristics I wouldn't assign to myself in those days. I've since obviously become entrepreneurial, right. But at first I was just a small businessman.
So you also brought something else to the table that a lot of people who start in business may not have, and that's in Jewish chutzpah. You had the willingness to take risks.
I didn't have a lot of choice. I had to take risks, and it later became willingness to take risk when you think you could quantify the alternatives. But yeah, that it's good and bad to that, Michael. So my brother Chris, as I mentioned, he's 10 years my junior. He came along around 1986 when we acquired the telephone number. Which gave me a lot more bandwidth. But one of the self-criticisms we have is that we knew an awful lot about technology early on, but we didn't do a lot with it, other than try and become the best floral and gift company we could become. And then one of the reasons when I stepped down as CEO and became chair, one of the reasons I did that was to take advantage of the knowledge we develop every day, trying to be the best floral and gift company we can be in terms of learning about technology, to apply that to our investments on the side. So we created a family holding company, we call it Clarum. And so for the last 6 years, we've had a family office and an investment company to invest in technologies, emerging technologies that we think we know a little something about or learning more about, so that we can magnify the benefit of that knowledge beyond just our floral business to other investments in addition.
That's great. I mean, technology. So I know that you first got involved with the internet like 92 or so.
Even earlier, before it was called the internet, Chris was always pressing the new technologies, and we were always testing the new thing that came along. But the one that we kept coming back to was this World Wide Web. Back then they were walled communities, places like Prodigy, CompuServe, and AOL. And we were involved in all of those, made a big bet on the leadership at AOL, which turned out to be fortuitous. You bet on, if I don't understand it well enough, but I trust you and you seem to understand it, that's how we made decisions there. And AOL was a good bet for us because it was a good bet on its leadership. People there, Steve Case, Ted Leonsis, Bob Pittman, men that we knew and trusted and built a good relationship with and could follow their lead. They were so well ahead of us in terms of understanding where technology was going. I'll give you, for instance, Chris and I are down in Virginia to meet with the AOL team, and Bob Pittman was the president of AOL then. And he walks us out the parking lot to our car after our visit. And I said, Bob, if I could ask you a question, a lot of people are pressing us now. This was in January of '99, I think it was. I said, Bob, a lot of people are suggesting that we go public. I really love your point of view. And he said, I'll abbreviate it. He said, I think you should think seriously about doing it, because we went in 1997 from having no competitors to 1999 having 21 different venture finance competitors that had just popped up. And he said, this is a wall for eyeballs and for the emerging technologies. And you've been doing this out of your pocket very successfully, but you don't know how long the war is going to last. And he says, going public would give you the gunpowder, the capital, to make sure you can stay in the fight. So it was one of the last bits of advice along those lines that helped us to decide to in fact go public, which we did later that year, which was fortuitous in its timing because we got out and raised all the money we needed in one shot before the tech bubble erupted soon after and cut off all that capital. But I said to Bob, Bob, what's your big vision here? What do you want to do with this very successful AOL? And he said, I'd like to merge a new tech company with an old media company and be the portal for them to change their relationship with their consumers, their customers, and use the new digital technology to do that. And I said, is there anyone in particular you're interested in? He said, yeah, I think I'd like to go after Time Warner. Well, lo and behold, he did, and they announced it. Yep. And that closed in March of 2000, which is about when the pin hit the balloon of the tech bubble.
Well, not only that, I was an equity trader at the time, and I remember, I think, was it Time Warner was buying AOL or reversed?
They merged.
They merged. So I remember that AOL, I think, initially went higher on the day and then just got slammed.
Yep.
So I don't think the market was that optimistic about the joining, but yeah.
But if you think, you used the word chutzpah before, that took chutzpah and it took vision. And by the way, it didn't work, but it should have worked. And if you look today, I mean, you just saw IAC, Barry Diller's company, which is very much a digital first company, just bought Meredith, the publishing division of Meredith, if not the whole thing. So it's the same theme, right, Michael? Same theme you were watching as an equity trader back then. It's still playing out. So I really applaud Steve and Ted Leonsis, Steve Case, Ted Leonsis, and Bob Pittman for having a vision back over 20 years ago now, 22 years ago, to see that could happen. Now, there have been many books written about why it didn't work, but it took vision and it took conviction and chutzpah.
Chutzpah. You know what? Listen, you got to love the chutzpah. You got to love the chutzpah. So let's touch let's move in a little bit of a different direction. So you started, you're a philanthropist. You started Smile Farms for developmentally challenged adolescents and adults. And you did that for a reason, but you're a philanthropic guy. You're involved in other philanthropic things as well. You want to talk a little bit about Smile Farms?
Sure. I mentioned earlier that I'm the oldest of 5 kids. My brother Chris, 10 years my junior to youngest, two sisters, Julie and Peggy, and then our middle brother is Kevin, and Kevin was born with developmental disabilities, and so part of the Smile Farm story is selfish. We're very, very fortunate as a family that my brother Kevin, for the past 25 plus years now, has lived in a wonderful group home run by a terrific agency on Long Island called IGHL, Independent Group Home Living, it stood for. Founded by a wonderful, wonderful philanthropic, caring, giving guy named Walter Stockton, who's become a very close family friend. And but back 25 years ago, my brother Kevin was accepted into one of their group homes, which was a big and important day in the McCann family lives because he's done so well there and he's thrived. And my parents are gone a long time, even before Kevin moved to IGHL, which I would have hoped they would have lived to have seen because it's been so good for him. But Walter Stockton created this agency 44 years ago, I think it is now. He was a professor at Suffolk Community College. And back then there was a fellow by the name of Geraldo Rivera, who's still very much in the media, who did an expose on a state hospital in Staten Island called Willowbrook, where he exposed what horrible conditions these people were living in. the first Governor Cuomo at the time decided to write the Willowbrook Decree, which was to shut down all of these places. And Walter is a teacher there, and he says to a local group of businessmen, why don't we pass the hat and raise some money and build a group home for some of these people who are from our community here on Eastern Long Island, and they should have a good place to live. Fast forward 44 years later, they have 100 group homes, they have daycare programs, they have all different kinds of programs. They take care of 8,000 to 10,000 people every day. This guy is a saintly guy and extremely accomplished and has impacted so many lives. But Michael, as you can imagine, with the work that you do with veterans at all, the big challenge for us as family members, responsible siblings, is what happens after I'm gone? And IGHL answers that question for a lot of people, our family and others, because my brother Kevin's doing so well. But Walter called Chris and I about 7 years ago and said, your brother Kevin could and should be working in the community, but I can't find jobs for him or any of my other guys. But I have an idea. Fast forward, the idea was Chris and I whip out the checkbook, buy some property in Mauritius, Long Island, convert an old garden center into a greenhouse facility, and create Smile Farms. And it's been a passion of ours now in that 6 years. And I'll confess that, yes, my brother Kevin works at Smile Farms. And what we do is we started out growing flowers and plants because we knew our franchisees and we as a company would buy everything they grew. So it's a not-for-profit. And we have 36 developmentally disabled adults, including Kevin McCann, working in that facility in Mauritius. They have full-time jobs. They're good, productive members of the community. And as you know, just like you and your business and in the abstract business, work is a lot more than a paycheck. It's a reason to get up in the morning. It's social. It's who you are. And so for 36 people there, that's very much the case. And then after we had the success there, we decided, well, let's see how many more people we can help, how many more families could help. Because if you have a sibling or a child in your family and they age out of the education programs, oftentimes there's very little or anything for them to do. And so this was our answer to that, taking people who aged out of the school programs, finding them work, teaching them skills. And now the third leg of that is finding them work within the community. We shifted from just flowers and plants to foodstuffs because there are so many thoughtful, good, and dedicated restaurateurs out there that said, if you could grow me blank, I'll buy all you can make. Lots of times it'll be microgreens because they don't truck well and they don't have good sources for them. But there's a young man on Long Island has a wonderful restaurant. He has about 15 restaurants, named Jamie Bonanno, who approached us a couple of years ago and said, I got these wonderful restaurants, one here in Patchogue called the Tap Room. And he said, I have these wonderful young people who work for me, but they don't want to just come to work and make a paycheck and have a nice social experience. They want to do something where they feel like they're giving back too. Do you have any suggestions? And so Jamie brings his people over to Smile Farms. We've dedicated several high growing benches, and his staff, mostly young people, get their hands in the soil with our guys, and we grow all different kinds of herbs and spices for them that they use behind the bar, in the tap room, or in the kitchen. And so we've partnered a lot with restaurateurs. Tom Colicchio, the famous Tom Colicchio, unbelievably talented chef, first brought us the idea of us growing things for his restaurant, Craft in New York City. Out in Long Island, he has a place called Small Batch out of Roosevelt Field, which is a terrific restaurant. So we grow all different kinds of things for them. So it's expanding. And now, Michael, I'm proud to tell you that we have almost a dozen campuses. We work always with a different agency that does the primary care providing. And we help them to build facilities, to pay their people, to run the programs, and to sell the product they grow. And the most popular product we have right now is in all of our 10, soon to be 12 campuses, we ask everyone to grow peppers because they're pretty hardy, they're easy to work with, they don't bruise easily. And so they all do. And we turn those peppers into hot sauce, which we call Heat from the Heart. And we sell that. And it's terrific hot sauce. We have a red and a green. And that's our most recent product. So Smile Farms has been an endeavor that's been fun for us. We work hard. We have a whole team of people who just work on it, and they work right out of our flowers offices. And what I'm proud of telling you is it's had such a positive impact on flowers, on 1-800-Flowers, because the young people who work for us, they give it their time, they volunteer all the time. We have hundreds of young people who volunteer their time to help us with our fundraisers, to come and work in the greenhouses. They get their hands in the dirt. So it's had a tremendous cultural impact on us that we thought would be good, but we had no idea how beneficial it would be. And of course, those terrific people, they go invite their friends to come to those events. And then their friends say, hey, is there a job opening for me at Flowers? So you're attracting the kind of people you want to have, that you want to work around with the crazy number of hours that we do.
That's great. So do you do any work with the ACLD?
We work with about 7 different agencies now, and there's half a dozen that we're in conversation with.
Okay.
And we're expanding. We're throughout Long Island, Staten Island, 4 boroughs. We're looking at New Jersey and Westchester and Rockland County now. Different agencies we're in conversation with. So it's growing dramatically. In fact, just recently, Tom Colicchio's manager John called us and said, "We have a spot in the kitchen. Do you have one of your clients who we could train in this function?" So we start the training program on Monday.
That's fantastic. You know what? You start with like a kernel, and it grows into a farm.
We're very lucky that whether it's our day jobs or our passion jobs, it's all about growing stuff.
That's true. That's a good point. So
the secret to our success, Michael, photosynthesis.
That's a good point. That's a secret to the air we breathe too. Right? So let's move a little bit to veterans and talk about what do you want to accomplish with veterans?
Well, to put it simply, we're an employer of a lot of people, and we have all different kinds of roles to play in our company. And we've had success over the years by being deliberate of finding veterans to work with, to bring into our organization, to work with them in different ways. But I think we could step it up some. So I'll turn that question back to you as we have before, Michael, and ask for your help there. We have an opportunity where we can find meaningful work opportunities, meaningful business ownership opportunities. And I just think the veterans community is a terrific place for us to start, because you have a big insight into the character of the people. You know what their commitment to service is. You know that they've already served our country. And it just amazes me at how, when you're in and amongst a veterans community, how much it feels like a community. And so I think that we would benefit from their culture, their skills, their experiences, and the spice that they bring to our community. So we have a half a dozen programs going on now, but none of them have they're all working, but they're not having the big impact I think we could.
It's unfortunately, so I mean, obviously veterans are an incredible constituency for career, because they're mission focused. They do the job.
They know how to organize people in group activities, have goals, accomplish them.
Right. And that's something that a lot of younger people may not initially have when they come to a job. So veterans are a phenomenal constituency. I know
and their spouses.
So in the charity that I'm involved with, we do work with the spouses. So my charity is a little bit different than yours. We're dealing with veterans who have invisible wounds, but we do work with their spouses, because it's important for the spouses to really understand what their husbands or wives or significant others are going through. Mm-hmm. But there's no question, and I can probably introduce you to a couple of people who run 501c3s that are focused on veteran employment, and maybe they can be of some assistance to you. But I think it's a tough, you know what, these days it's tough to really hit critical mass fast. But I think that
Well, we have a program that Faith Bradley, who's our new HR person, brought over with her, where we focus on veteran spouses. We've long had a pipeline into John Jay College's Veterans Affairs Office, who feed us people regularly. We work with Veterans Advantage on a number of programs, but I still think there's something in there. For example, there's a new program that we'll be working on where we'll be opening up distribution centers around the country for a broader range of products beyond just what we have. There, we're going to be working with our florist, but they're going to need other people. So the New York area has veterans, of course, but there are other communities that are much richer in veteran populations because they might be proximate to a military installation. Yeah. And I'm always struck by how those communities that are heavily populated with veterans and their families have a much stronger sense of community and tight-knit sense about them because of the skills, the value, and the common set of experiences that those veteran communities have. So I think I open it up to you and your community suggestion, Michael, about what can we do to take the half a dozen wonderful things that we're doing and wrap it better and give it more energy and more oomph for selfish reasons, to attract more and more of these veterans and their families into our company to help make us better.
I'll tell you what I'd like to do, and it wouldn't so much be my input, but I would love to introduce you to Judy Elias, who's the founder of Heroes to Heroes. She's got contacts in a lot of those areas that you're looking to penetrate, but more than that, she knows a lot of people. So I think she could potentially be of assistance, and at the very least, she'll be as inspirational for you as you'll be for her. So I think that would be good.
Anyone that we as a team could sit down with who could help us sort this out. We're looking to make a bigger difference.
That's great. You know what? And you're looking to make it with a constituency that deserves to be helped. So
I agree. I think they deserve to be helped, and we're firmly convinced from the experiences we've had over the years that they'll help us.
You know what? Win-win. Is there anything better?
No, it's what works best.
That's right. That's a great formula for success.
Now, is in your business, is it very people intensive?
You know what? It to a certain extent, we run lean and mean. So I started my company in 2008 because the company that I owned then was affected greatly by the Lehman failure. So, you know, I actually started my company with my wife, and we run it very, very tight. You know, we're very cost conscious. So it is labor intensive, but we don't.
Not in terms of number of people.
Correct. Yeah. I mean,
and a market like this, I would imagine it started out being very good for you, and now a lack of inventory slowing it down.
Yeah, last year was good. This year has definitely seen a little bit of a slowdown. I mean, interest rates on the refinance side, it's definitely quite less. The purchase side is impacted by inventory, no question.
Yep. And so how long, Michael, you've been around this business now for a good number of years?
Insurance about 13.
How long does this demand hold up?
That's a good question. I mean, I think so, you know, a lot of sellers haven't been selling, because you sell and where do you go? But I think that sellers are going to come out of the woodwork now as they realize that a peak may have been hit.
Yep.
And they rush to the market to try and catch the top that's probably no longer there. So, you know, I think it's cyclical. I think we're going to start seeing inventory hit the market personally.
And we're told that the Fed has in mind a half a dozen or so rate increases this year. We've already seen one. Every time that happens, mortgage rates notch up a bit. that's got to impact the price that people are able to pay for a home. Right?
Exactly. Home affordability has definitely dropped, but the Fed raised a quarter point last meeting, which was probably not enough. They're probably behind the curve. They're going to have to start to hike in a real way.
And what happened to mortgage rates with that 1/4 increase?
We said again?
What happened to mortgage rates with a 1/4 increase at the Fed rate?
Well, the 10-year initially didn't do much, but I know that right now we're pushing 5% on a 30-year, which
That's quite a difference in a year. Probably 40% increase.
probably something like that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. But I mean, I remember when I got out of my undergraduate program, money markets were paying 18%, which might age me a little bit.
So that was the Carter years.
You know what? Reagan, it was not. I got out of undergrad in 1980.
So just when Reagan was elected.
Reagan was just getting into office. It's the voters don't love inflation.
With good reason. It's frightening.
You know what? It's you look at how it impacts the people who don't have unlimited funds. And it's like food or gas. What do I buy? Do I buy the gas to go to work, or do I buy food to put it on my table?
Mm-hmm.
But
not good choices.
I digress.
How's the Ukrainian situation impacting sentiment in the veterans community?
You know what? I don't think it's had the same impact that COVID had in terms of the vets that I work with who have invisible wounds, who are suffering with moral injury, who had a depression issue before COVID, and the isolation, the depression, the loneliness of COVID was a huge factor. So I don't think the Ukrainian crisis is having anywhere near the impact that COVID had.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and do you see anything abating in your community from the pains of COVID and isolation that came from it in terms of the loneliness epidemic? Are you seeing it abating at all? Are you seeing programs that are helping veterans and their families deal with it better?
Well, so we deal with one specific sector, which is moral injury, risk of death by suicide. So, that's a little bit slower in terms of, it's a work in progress. It's really hard to tell, because in some ways we're still, I know Philadelphia just went back to indoor masks. In some ways we're still dealing with COVID. So yep. I think it's going to take a little time to work its way out and find out exactly where we are. But we actually, so part of our mission, is team journeys to Israel are a key part of our mission.
And I heard about that, Michael. That's a 2-week trip.
10 days, and just we're non-denominational, and the majority of vets who go through our program are not Jewish, but Israel is the birthplace of so many religions, and there's no greater
culture that understands military service.
Well, actually, our teams travel with 3 IDF soldiers who in many ways suffer similarly, but there's no more spiritual place on earth. And, the faith of Israel, one of the key contributing factors to suicide is loss of faith. And, guys and women who have been in combat, who have seen things, who have potentially had to do things, loss of faith is almost understandable. And, the peer support that they gain through these journeys, and the contact they have with so much powerful things. We've had guys who've had revelations coming out of Yad Vashem. We've had guys, actually, let me and then I'll let you go, but I'll change my virtual background for a second. So this is Billy, who he had his moment at the Western Wall, and there's stories of guys coming out of Yad Vashem and just coming to revelations about the difference between what they saw, what they had to do, and how that differs from murder and sociopathic behavior, and how they were soldiers and they had to do in the work in doing their job, they had to do certain things. But yeah, you know what, I met Judy, I guess about 7 years ago now, by chance. See how chance happens?
Yep.
And
But you have to be open to it, or chance doesn't happen.
That's exactly right. Open mind, open heart.
Yep.
Absolutely. Well, Jim, let me tell you, this was great. It was a pleasure to finally get to meet the guy in the 1-800-Flowers building who knows Jerry Grossman, the dentist. And I will send Lisa.
Jerry the dentist is retiring this month.
No way.
Yes, indeed.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, I had no idea.
Now we both have to go out and find a new dentist.
You know, I thought maybe he'd sent his clients a going on retirement letter. Wow, I had no idea.
Sure he will, but I saw him 4 or 5 weeks ago, and he's headed to Florida.
No kidding. You know what? He deserves it.
Indeed.
He deserves it. We all do. But all
We're
right. Well, if I find
lucky enough to get there.
that's very true. That's very true. But if I find a good dentist, I'll let you know. But it's going to be hard to find a perfectionist like Jerry.
That's for sure.
Absolutely.
But Michael,
Right.
thanks for this opportunity to talk about what we do at Flowers every day, what we do at Smile Farms, and the next time we get to talk like this, I hope we're talking about a great new program that's up and running that really leverages what we have and what we can do to help a very deserving veterans community.
I hope so too. So listen, you take care and be well.
Thanks, Michael.
All right.
Thanks for listening to Do You Ever Wonder? And if there's a subject that's always been on your mind, let us know. We hope you'll join us next time for the show that answers your questions. And please like and share this episode with your friends and on your social media. See you next time.
Thanks, Michael.